This Pachachka presentation is on contract law, created and narrated by me, David Berrios, for my Sports Law and Contracts course at Full Sail University. I hope that you enjoy my presentation on contract law and you can learn something about what contracts consist of. What's the basics of a contract? Let's see. A contract is an agreement between two or more parties who agree on an obligation for something which could be for goods or services. A contract can also be created to keep the parties from doing something like selling a good or performing services. Now, sources of contract law. First, we have common law. Common law is created by the legislators as statutes. Those are laws that everyone must face. Then we have case law. Case law is set by the precedent. Then as we move on, the third source of contract law, we have the Uniform Commercial Code. The Uniform Commercial Code governs the sale of goods or products. Now as we move on, now let's talk about the 5 elements of a binding contract. Well, the first element of a binding contract is capacity. The parties involved must be capable of understanding the contract and have the authority to sign the contract. For instance, the person must be coherent. The person must not be unaware of what's going on, unaware of its surroundings. Someone cannot force someone to basically sign a contract. Also, the person must have the authority. Someone who is not the person named on a contract cannot be signing the contract. For instance, if I am signing a contract, my friend can't sign it for me unless he is legally authorized to do so with my written consent. Now, subject matter. The contract must be for legal purposes and not be a contract for anything illegal. That's basically self-explanatory. But let's put an example. I cannot make a contract with a drug dealer to buy drugs and pay him later because buying drugs is illegal in the United States. So therefore, a contract of the sort would not be acknowledged by the courts and will land them in jail. Moving forward, consideration. Consideration is the payment or bargain that the contract will be created for. Usually it's money, but not always. So just remember, whatever's being exchanged in the contract will be considered the consideration. Moving on, we're going to talk about mutual agreement. Mutual agreement is the meeting of the minds. There must be an agreement between both parties on what will be exchanged, expected, or bargained from both parties. For instance, both parties must know what they're talking about. One party cannot sign a contract without specifically knowing what the contract entails, what he will receive or what he will have to give for the contract. That's what the meetings of mind is for. But now moving on and talking about agreements. An agreement consists of 3 elements: an offer, the consideration, and the acceptance. The offer is basically self-explanatory. What is one party offering to the next party? The consideration, like we discussed, is the payment or bargain that the contract will be created for. So the consideration is what will be exchanged. And then, of course, finally, you have the acceptance. Basically, I accept your offer and the consideration of the contract. So therefore, acceptance is the last part of the agreement process. And then last, we have mutual obligation. Mutual obligation is basically the obligation for both parties to follow what it's in the contract. Well, moving forward our Pachachka presentation, we're going to talk about the remedies of breach of contract. Damages. Damages means money. Basically, when you breach a contract and there's damages, that means someone has lost money. Moving forward, we have compensatory. Compensatory is what was lost. Basically, it's the compensation for what was lost. So I am being compensated for you breaching your contract. So I'm going to be compensated for what I was lost by you breaching your contract. Now we have consequential damages. Consequential damages based on what occurred due to the breach of contract, but not necessary something the person who breached the contract did on purpose. So basically, it's you breached the contract. There were repercussions because you breached the contract. The repercussions did not happen because you breached it. You did not intentionally cause those repercussions. Those repercussions just came because you broke the contract. So, moving forward, we're going to talk about punitive. Punitive is used to punish the person who breached the contract. Self-explanatory. Next, we're going to move to liquidated. Liquidated is a set amount specified, usually because of the difficulty of analyzing the damages. Now we're going to move to equitable remedies. When something actually occurs due to the breach of the contract. Moving forward, we're talking about specific performance. When a defendant is forced to continue with the contract. Next, rescission. Undoing the contract and returning both parties to where they were at the beginning of the contract. Next, we have restitution. Restitution is returning the goods or bargained in the contract. Finally, in my Prochaska presentation, we're going to talk about promissory estoppel, when one party continued their version of the contract based on what they relied on what the other party did or said. My final presentation is my image reference, and I hope you enjoyed my Prochaska presentation. Thank you very much.